she's not in the water. I can tell you that. She wasn't put in the water. I think this scenario was made up to use the water and the boat as a scenario for whatever he did. And I'm not accusing him of doing anything at this point in time, but from my understanding of what I saw from this test, I don't believe she's in the water. I really don't.
April 5th, 2026, 7:30 in the morning. Search and rescue brought Brian Hooker back to Soulmate after searching the waters around Elbow Cay for 3 to 4 hours. His wife Lynette had been missing since the night before. He boarded the boat, and then he stayed there for almost 24 hours, alone, on the vessel at the center of everything. Per Blaine Stevenson, a friend of the Hookers who spoke directly to Fox News Digital. So the incident happened Saturday at 7:30 p.m. He came ashore at 4 a.m. The search and rescue took him out for 3 or 4 hours and brought him back to his boat. He sat on his boat for almost 24 hours until search and rescue brought him his dinghy back. 24 hours. On that boat. While his wife was in the water. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. His attorneys say he is innocent. Everything in this video is drawn from verified public reporting and named on-record sources only. This is not a verdict. But the questions Brian Hooker has not answered deserve to be laid out clearly, one by one. Before anything else, Lynette Hooker. Lynette Hooker was 55 years old. A Michigan mother. She had been married to Brian Hooker for over 20 years. Together they built something that millions of people dream about and very few actually do. They documented their sailing adventures on social media under the name The Sailing Hookers. They had a following, people who watched them explore the Caribbean together, people who followed their journey season by season. In 2023, they bought a sailboat they named Soulmate in the coastal town of Rockport, Texas, and then embarked on a cruise through the Gulf of Mexico. This was not a couple on a one-time vacation. This was a couple living their retirement dream together. Lynette Hooker chose the ocean because she wanted to. She documented every part of it. Her daughter Carly Aylesworth posted a video on Mother's Day, the first Mother's Day of her life without her mother, and said, "It's pretty hard right now to know that she's not a text away anymore." That daughter is out there right now trying to find her mother. Trying to get answers. Trying to understand what happened on the night of April 4th. That is who this case is about. That is who we need to keep in mind while we go through everything that follows. Brian Hooker told Bahamian authorities that he and Lynette left the shoreline at Hopetown by dinghy at approximately 7:30 in the evening on April 4th, 2026. The Soulmate was anchored in the waters near Elbow Cay in the area of Aunt Pat's Bay. The dinghy was 8 feet long. In a private phone call to friends Blaine and Marnette Stevenson, a call that was later obtained and reported by CBS News, Brian described what happened. His own words. "She basically just bounced off the dinghy in the middle of a little blow. She had the spare dinghy key in her dry bag which was with her. The wind blew us apart so fast that I think she tried to swim back to the sailboat." He said the waves were 3 feet. He said he was yelling for her the whole time. He said he threw her a flotation cushion right after she went in. He could not tell if she got it or not. He said after an hour of calling her, he never heard her voice. And then he said, in his own words to his friend, "We stayed too long. We were left too dark. No life jackets. No life jackets." He told Bahamian authorities that Lynette fell off with the ignition key in her pocket. With the key submerged, the engine died. He said he could not restart it. He paddled to shore. He arrived at the marina at Marsh Harbor at approximately 4 o'clock in the morning on April 5th, roughly 8 to 8.5 hours after the moment he says Lynette went overboard. He did not call authorities that night. He did not raise an alarm that night. He arrived at Marsh Harbor in the dark, and he waited until the next morning to report his wife missing. Per his own statements to multiple national media outlets, ABC, CBS, NBC, after his release from Bahamian custody, Brian said, "I have no message to those who doubt me at all, ever. I am going to keep doing what I need to do to find my wife. She belongs with me. We belong with each other. My sole focus is finding Lynette. And I am going to need somebody with more authority to tell me to stop." Hours after saying that on camera, he was on a flight home. Brian Hooker has not been charged. His account is what it is. But there are 7 specific questions that the verified public record raises, and that have not been answered publicly. Question 1. 24 hours on the boat. Per Blaine Stevenson, speaking directly to Fox News Digital, after search and rescue brought Brian back to Soulmate on the morning of April 5th, Brian stayed on that boat for almost 24 hours. Stevenson said, "At no point did he really look at the situation and give anybody any more details than he had at the beginning when supposedly he was in shock." Think about what that means. His wife went overboard the night before. Search and rescue had just completed their initial pass. And Brian Hooker returned to Soulmate, the vessel at the center of everything, and stayed there alone for almost 24 hours. Stevenson also told Fox News Digital, even if he accepts the fact that his wife is gone, does he not want closure? Does he not want redemption? That question has not been answered. Question 2. No life jackets. Brian said it himself in the private call to the Stevensons, no life jackets. A nighttime dinghy trip. Rough conditions. 3-foot waves. Winds at approximately 20 miles per hour. Neither Brian nor Lynette wearing a life jacket. He explained they had Coast Guard compliant jackets under the seats but were not wearing them. This is a couple with years of sailing experience. Blaine Stevenson told CBS News the Hookers were described as having been sailing for more than a decade. Why, on a nighttime dinghy trip in those conditions, were neither of them wearing the life jackets stored under the seats? That question has not been answered. Question 3. 8 hours. Lynette goes overboard at approximately 7:30 in the evening. Brian arrives at the marina at 4 in the morning. That is 8 to 8.5 hours. He says he spent roughly an hour calling for her. He threw the flotation cushion. He anchored the dinghy. He could not restart the engine. What happened in the remaining 7 hours? The full 8-hour gap between when she went overboard and when he reached shore has not been publicly explained in detail. That question has not been answered. Question 4. Reported missing the next day. Lynette went missing on the night of April 4th. She was not reported missing until the morning of April 5th. Brian arrived at Marsh Harbor at 4 a.m. The marina was there. Authorities were reachable. If your wife falls off a dinghy in the dark in rough water, why wait until morning? His attorneys have not addressed this specific detail publicly. That question has not been answered. Question 5. She belongs with me. In his media interviews, verified across ABC, NBC, and CBS, Brian used specific language when discussing finding Lynette. He said, "She belongs with me. We belong with each other." Possessive framing. Not, "I need to find her," or, "She needs to come home." She belongs with me. Per News Nation's Ashley Banfield, who has covered this case from the beginning, she said publicly, "I don't know what Brian Hooker did or did not do. I just don't like his story, and I know there's a lot more to it." That is a named, on-record journalist who has covered maritime investigations making a direct public assessment. Banfield's statement stands on its own. Question 6. Left the Bahamas. On April 14th, hours after telling every national news outlet that his sole focus was finding Lynette and that it would take a higher authority to make him stop, Brian Hooker boarded a commercial flight and left the Bahamas. Per his Bahamian attorney Terrell Butler, the departure was to tend to his ailing mother. That is the explanation on record. But here is the verified context. He left. He has not returned. The investigation is active and federal. And per Blaine Stevenson, who knew them both, "If it was my wife, I would still be there. I would not be leaving. I would be looking and helping them search and trying to give them additional information to help locate her. Whatever it would take." Question 7. The GPS. When Soulmate left Marsh Harbor on May 8th, sailed by 2 men Carly Aylesworth had never seen before, the No Foreign Land tracking app went dark. The GPS had been turned off mid-crossing. A boat at the center of a federal criminal investigation. GPS turned off. Why? The Coast Guard intercepted Soulmate 40 nautical miles off Melbourne, Florida, as part of what they publicly described in an official news release as a complex surveillance and interdiction operation. That is not language the Coast Guard uses for a routine vessel transfer. The Sea of Abaco has returned nothing. Coast Guard search and recovery operations ran for over 10 days in the waters around Elbow Cay, Hope Town, and the broader Abaco Island chain. professional divers, drone technology, a helicopter. Per the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, the operation shifted from search and rescue to search and recovery. And still, nothing. Not a body. Not a piece of clothing. Not the flotation cushion Brian says he threw to her. Not the dry bag. Not the spare dinghy key. Not the life jackets stored under the seats. Per Newsweek, the Sea of Abaco sits at approximately 15 feet at its deepest in the relevant areas. Clear water. Thoroughly searched from the surface, from below, and from the air. The Sea of Abaco gives things back. That is what local experts, fishermen, and divers consistently say. If Lynette went into that water under the circumstances Brian describes, something should have come back by now. Nothing has. Per News Nation's Ashley Banfield, who has reported on this case extensively, Brian was on Soulmate for a couple of days before he was taken into custody. That detail, combined with what Blaine Stevenson confirmed about the 24 hours on the boat on April 5th, means the vessel that is now a federal crime scene had Brian Hooker aboard it for an extended period after Lynette disappeared. There is one development in this investigation that has not received enough attention. Less than a week before Soulmate was seized, the U.S. Coast Guard Investigative Service made a public move. They released images of a second sailboat and asked the public to help identify it. Per a Coast Guard memo obtained by CBS News, that vessel had been moored near Soulmate at Antpats Bay on or around April 4th, the last day anyone other than Brian Hooker confirmed seeing Lynette alive. The memo stated directly, the owners/occupants of the sailing vessel may have information relevant to the Kai's investigation. The criminal investigative arm of the United States Coast Guard, asking who else was in that water on April 4th. That is the move of an investigation that is not satisfied with the account it has been given. An investigation working the margins of the scene. Looking for anyone who saw what happened, or did not happen, in the waters around Antpats Bay that night. Per CBS News, Kai's investigators were simultaneously conducting active witness interviews, including some scheduled for that week. The mystery sailboat has not been publicly identified as of this reporting. Its owner or occupants have not been named. But the Coast Guard's documented desire to find anyone else who was in that water tells you exactly what the investigators believe, that there may be a witness out there who has not yet come forward. If you were on a sailboat near Antpats Bay, near Elbow Cay, or near Hopetown in the Bahamas in early April 2026, Kai's wants to speak with you. You can remain completely anonymous. The Soulmate is at Fort Pierce. Per the U.S. Coast Guard's official statement, the seizure was part of a complex surveillance and interdiction operation. Per Fox News Digital, a source familiar with the investigation confirmed forensic processing began no later than May 12th. Per Treasure Coast News reporters watching the scene, processing continued through May 13th. Investigators in black shirts with yellow lettering, tan pants, and blue gloves were observed boarding the vessel, searching below deck for hours, and removing evidence in sealed bags. Per forensic scientist Joseph Scott Morgan, speaking to Fox News Digital about what investigators are likely looking for, large focal areas of blood, a copious amount of blood, dried blood. Has there been any effort to sanitize the area, clean the area? Morgan also addressed the timeline challenge directly. He said investigators are not in an ideal situation, seizing the boat more than 5 weeks after Lynette disappeared. He said biological evidence becomes degraded and compromised over time. But he also said this, precisely, that's a much more difficult process without the body, but it's not impossible to do. Per Kenneth Engerand, adjunct professor of maritime law at the University of Houston Law Center, speaking to Fox News Digital, they can't file charges without substantial evidence. But that's why they're on the boat. They're looking for evidence. The Soulmate is an American-flagged vessel. Per Engerand, the United States has full legal authority to prosecute crimes that occurred in Bahamian waters involving American citizens on an American vessel. The murder statute. The statute governing violent acts on American vessels. Both available. Both applicable. In an American federal court. Brian Hooker's Michigan attorney, Crystal Marie Hauser, had previously asked the public to give Brian the benefit of the doubt. When CBS News called her on May 12th, the day crime scene tape photographs were published, she hung up the phone without answering a single question. Brian Hooker himself has made no public statement since the seizure. Per Royal Bahamas Police Commissioner Shanta Knowles, speaking to NBC News, Brian Hooker remains a suspect in the Bahamian investigation. He has not been charged. But the investigation is ongoing, and the U.S. Coast Guard is now conducting its own parallel federal criminal inquiry. Carly Aylesworth has been asking questions since before the national media was fully paying attention. She has described a history of concerning behavior within the relationship, characterizations that Brian Hooker's legal representation has denied. Per ABC News, Carly said she could not understand how her mother drowned or got floated away. She said it made her ask, "Why didn't he do this? Why didn't you do that? Why did that happen?" Per CNN, Carly said the couple had a volatile relationship that had, at times, become violent. CNN was unable to independently confirm that account with law enforcement. Per Newsweek, Carly retraced the path the two supposedly took in the dinghy and did not find any contradictions to Brian's account of the disappearance. She is not making claims she cannot support. She is asking questions that the evidence has not answered. On May 8th, she was watching the tracker. She saw two strangers moving Soulmate north. The GPS went dark. She posted a video immediately. "The boat has moved by two men that I've never seen before. They turned off their GPS. I have not heard any news from the Coast Guard regarding this." She did not know the Coast Guard already had the boat. Hours later, she found out. On Mother's Day, the first one without her mother, she said, "It's the first Mother's Day without my mom. It's pretty hard right now to know that she's not a text away anymore." Carly Aylesworth has earned an answer. That is not a statement about Brian Hooker's guilt or innocence. It is a statement about what this case is ultimately about. A 55-year-old woman who went to the Bahamas with someone she had trusted for 25 years and has not come home. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. His attorneys say he is innocent. We say that every time, because it is true and because it matters. What is also true, drawn from verified named sources only, is this. He sat on Soulmate for almost 24 hours after his wife disappeared. Per Blaine Stevenson, at no point did he give anyone additional details beyond what he said at the beginning. He left the Bahamas hours after saying it would take a higher authority to make him stop searching. He has not returned. His attorney hung up on CBS News the day crime scene tape went up on the boat. He has said nothing publicly since the seizure. The Soulmate is now at Fort Pierce, officially, legally, formally a crime scene. Federal forensic investigators are going through every surface of that vessel in deliberate professional silence, looking for the truth. The Coast Guard has described the seizure as part of a complex surveillance and interdiction operation. That is not language used for passive evidence collection. That is language used for an operation that was planned, monitored, and executed deliberately. Somewhere in this country, Brian Hooker knows the forensic team is aboard. Lynette Hooker was 55 years old. She chose a life on the ocean because she wanted to. She is someone's mother. Her last caption said she was not going anywhere for a while. Her boat is a crime scene tonight. If you have any information connected to this case, about the night of April 4th, about any vessel in Aunt Pat's Bay, about anything at all, submit it through the Kai's Tips application. Anonymous. Available on iOS and Android. If you were on a sailboat near Aunt Pat's Bay or Hope Town in early April 2026, the Coast Guard wants to speak with you. Completely anonymous. Kai's Tips app, iOS and Android. Link in description.